Maybe I forgot to bring it again. Oh, here it is.
And from one set of deceptions to another, Deadly Deception, our movie premiere tonight at 10:30. And another new Columbo, Sex and the Married Detective, next Sunday evening at 9 o'clock.
New next Saturday.
The man just died in the confessional.
There's no trace of him.
I'm telling you that the man was dead.
The most unusual crime fighters you'll ever meet.
I want you to stop asking around about my husband.
Tom Bosley.
Stay away from things that don't concern you. I can't stress this too strongly.
New murder mysteries.
Did you really think that I'd come here alone?
Father Dowling Investigates. Next Saturday at 8:15 on ITV.
In a moment, we join Trevor MacDonald at the studios of ITN for the latest weekend news.
And all because the lady loves Cadbury's milk tray.
That's a nice rig, sir.
That's not a rug, Buff. It is a Bedouin birthing blanket. Tradition has it, a powerful aid to fertility.
Great! I'll get me mum one.
A Barclays card? Put it away, Buff. The Tuareg are an ancient people. They respect only hard cash and hard bargaining.
انت مجنون.
شمالي دك.
جاي من فين انت مش فاهمك. انت مجنون.
Thank you. Boa.
You sound fluent, sir.
We are both fluent, Buff. Sadly, in different languages. How much is the rug? So, where did your Barclays card get you?
Well, it got me reg insured for the next 3 months.
Insurance, Buff. I think I can handle the rug. Ah, smell those Tuareg campfires. Unmistakable. Look, shoot, push off.
Now you know what an oil has to go through. Why chance anything less?
No matter how life goes, with all its joys and woes, I never feel in a jam. I guess I'm just an amicable man. That's right. Got no worries financially. Got a pension and policy.
With a pension from Scottish Amicable, you won't have to worry about life's little ups and downs.
No wonder
Scottish Amicable. Pensions, life assurance, endowments, investments.
For those of you who find it a bit of a strain getting through the Sunday papers and who long for a quality Sunday newspaper in a sharp, concise and digestible form, might we make a suggestion? Cut through the paperwork this weekend with the Sunday Torygraph.
For those who like their tea to taste like tea, finding the word decaffeinated might be somewhat disconcerting. But when you gently decaffeinate your tea within hours of picking it, then getting a modern cup of tea to taste like a proper one...
Ooh, look, silly. Lions.
Well, it isn't hard to swallow at all. Lyon's decaffeinated tea. Keep the flavor, keep the taste.
On tonight's Aspel and Company, we'll be lending an ear to Rod Stewart, lending an eye to Patricia Hodge, and lending whatever he needs to Dudley Moore. All donations gratefully received.
It is very good of you to see me at the weekend. Hercule Poirot.
The news from ITN.
Inside President Saddam's rebel city, ITN has first pictures. Mr. Baker in Kuwait to assess the chances for regional peace. Mr. Yeltsin calls for open war on Mr. Gorbachev's leadership. And thousands of holidaymakers get away as airlines rally round. Good evening. There's growing evidence tonight that Iraq is on the brink of full-scale civil war. One opposition leader claims that President Saddam Hussein is using mustard gas to crush the rebellion. Republican Guard units are reported to be moving into Iraq's second city, Basra, which the rebels say they still control. The 40 Western journalists, including a three-man ITN crew who had been held by the Iraqis, have arrived safely in Jordan. Among them, ITN's Andrew Simmons, who has just sent us this report from Amman.
3 miles from the center of Basra, and the demoralized, humiliated Iraqi army, in retreat from one war, had walked into another conflict with its own people. Saddam Hussein's second city had been overrun by pro-Iranian Shiites. Republican Guard reinforcements were forming up to pound the city with artillery as we drove on into the front line. The soldiers suddenly realized we were foreign journalists. We were seized and forced to sit at gunpoint by the wheels of a tank while our cars were systematically looted. After 5 days of imprisonment, with the return of our camera, Sam Gracie managed to film the airlift to Baghdad, the Iraqis unaware that our equipment was still working. What we're not able to show were the scenes of destruction inside the city, which we witnessed while being moved around by our captors. United Nations helicopters, which had been used at the end of the Iran-Iraq war, were in the hands of the Iraqi Air Force. The Republican Guards were using the city's university as their base in the battle for Basra. We had witnessed barrages from artillery, T-72 tanks, and multiple rocket launchers targeted at the center of the city. Fighting was still going on as we left. The insurrection was far from over. This ruined city, with no water, power or sanitation caused by the Allied bombardment, which cut off most of its road links, was being steadily throttled by Saddam's forces. It was impossible to gauge how many Iraqi soldiers had defected, though. With us on this flight, the last 2 American prisoners of war, men more relieved than us at this flight, which was to end at a military base outside Baghdad. There was bewilderment here. The wait for a handover to the Red Cross was another 24 hours away as we rummaged through the remnants of equipment. This afternoon, freedom on the Iraq-Jordan border, and the first opportunity to tell of what the world didn't know about Basra.
The soldiers themselves are gauging just how long they want to stay with Saddam. When there are real problems, and this Iranian influence could be taking place as well, is causing real problems for everybody.
We walked out of this safely, and nearly all Western journalists are now banished from Iraq, unable to witness moves now underway to crush the uprising. Andrew Simmons, ITN in Amman.
Andrew Simmons joins us now from Amman. Andrew, you talked about the destruction you saw, but there are reports tonight that Basra is again surrounded by Republican guards. From what you saw, is a full-scale civil war there now inevitable?
I would say so. When we left, the city was entirely surrounded by the Republican Guard. T-72 tanks, multiple rocket launchers and artillery were still pounding the city. And also there was close hand-to-hand fighting going on. My estimation is that the city will be crushed, that the Iraqi army is in a good position, and despite what the opposition forces say, the Iraqis look like moving in and taking out all resistance.
Andrew, give us a sense of some of that destruction and mayhem that you weren't able to film.
Well, we were driven from one place to another quite regularly. We drove through one street where there'd been a very large battle, and we could hear the crackle of small arms fire as we drove through. T-72 tanks were firing into the city. It was evident that the Republican Guard was using its heavy firepower to move in. Now, whether or not that's going to be effective with the sort of tactics that the Shiites are going to be using is another matter. Whether they'll be able to get that one stage further is open to question.
Andrew, only a few seconds left. Are there defections among people in the Iraqi army now?
There certainly are. I spoke to one officer who told me categorically that if he could have joined the rebellion, he would have done. He said Saddam made a massive mistake. He misjudged the Soviet Union, and that was that.
Andrew Simmons, thank you very much indeed. The American Secretary of State James Baker has confirmed that the United States has warned President Saddam Hussein not to use chemical weapons against the rebels in southern Iraq. Mr. Baker was speaking just before arriving in Kuwait City today, part of his Middle East tour.
A senior American statesman has finally made an appearance in this now quiet war zone. Secretary of State James Baker flew in this morning for a quick visit, which even officially is being described as low-key. Surrounded by the entire force of Desert Storm, his security men were alert and taking no chances. And his helicopter was fully escorted to the city centre for his visit with the Crown Prince. No doubt Mr. Baker touched on matters such as Kuwait's reconstruction. The Americans expect to win 70% of the contracts for that. And he heard the Crown Prince say Saddam Hussein was still a regional threat.
As long as Saddam in power, I don't think the whole region will witness any sort of security and stability.
It was straight back to the airport after a curiously dismissive visit. His main suggestion, an arms embargo against Iraq. He saw no American citizens, he didn't visit his troops, he didn't even wave goodbye. Desmond Hamill, ITN, Kuwait.
The leader of the Russian Federation, Mr. Boris Yeltsin, has urged the Soviet people to declare war on President Gorbachev in protest of the new Union Treaty for the Soviet republics. The treaty promises to give the republics more freedom, but it won't allow them to become fully independent.
This was Boris Yeltsin's toughest attack yet on Mikhail Gorbachev, leaving no doubt he intends to do all he can to oust the Soviet leader. Mr. Yeltsin was speaking at a rally of Democrats in a Moscow cinema. Among other prominent figures present, Gavril Popov, radical mayor of Moscow and a key Yeltsin supporter. Boris Yeltsin's message was uncompromising. Let's declare war on the leadership of the country, which has led us into a quagmire, he demanded.
Нас обманули, и мы сейчас должны раскрыть глаза, что это была ложь, и идти уже своим путем. Не той перестройкой, которая была особенно в последние годы.
Mr. Yeltsin was speaking a week before a referendum on a new union treaty for the 15 Soviet republics. The treaty retains Moscow's control over defense and internal security, says independence can only be allowed within the framework of the Soviet constitution, but gives republics the right to have diplomatic links with foreign states. That won't be enough for nationalists in most areas. 6 republics have already said they'll boycott the referendum. Mr. Yeltsin is trying to capitalize on growing unrest, but tonight the chairman of the Supreme Soviet said his threat to the leadership would not be allowed to go on. Tim Hewitt, ITN, Moscow.
2 people are reported to have died during clashes between police and anti-communist protesters in Belgrade, the capital of Yugoslavia. More than 70 were injured. Police used tear gas and water cannon and thousands of demonstrators angry at communist control of the media. Opposition groups say biased reporting has prevented fair elections. Tonight, dozens of tanks and armoured vehicles have moved into the city and taken up positions outside the Parliament building. Thousands of riot police are reported to be patrolling the streets. The Albanian authorities have clamped down on the flood of refugees streaming out of the poverty-stricken country. The port of Diresh has been put under martial law. Earlier, troops stormed the ship carrying people trying to get out. Up to 20,000 have now arrived in the Italian port of Brindisi. They've hijacked a fleet of ships to make their escape. Many are sleeping rough and searching for food. There's growing concern over health and hygiene for the refugees. Italy says most will now be deported. Here, hundreds of staff have been suspended after the collapse of the International Leisure Group and its airline Air Europe. But thousands of holidaymakers stranded by the group's financial crisis managed to get away today after leading tour operators stepped in to help.
With the International Leisure Group in ruins, tour operators have been working round the clock to get stranded holidaymakers home. These skiers, hastily rerouted onto an Air Holland flight, were among the lucky ones.
We heard they'd gone bust, and that was it. They sorted us out, put us on the plane, onto Air Holland, and it was great.
But some hoping to fly from Gatwick today were less fortunate.
We've just come along here and gone to the check-in desk and been told that just given a sheet of paper to say that we're not going anywhere.
Tonight, the Association of British Travel Agents said it had received dozens of calls from people worried about other holiday firms going under.
The business of ILG will be hopefully spread around all the other companies in the market, which should make them have an easier time than they might have otherwise had.
And as employees struggled to advise would-be holidaymakers, the company administrators announced that hundreds of International Leisure Group staff had tonight been suspended. James Forlong, ITN, Gatwick Airport.
The Shadow Trade Secretary Gordon Brown has accused the Conservatives of replacing their Iron Lady with a man of straw. He told Scottish Labour Party delegates that the Prime Minister, Mr Major, was incapable of sorting out the poll tax or the recession.
The attack on Mr Major, launched at the Scottish Labour Party conference in Aberdeen this afternoon, is part of a concerted campaign to puncture the Prime Minister's image, which has him riding high in the polls.
But let the country know something about Mr Major. The John Major, the dithering, muddling and indecisive John Major, who cannot sort out the poll tax because he has long supported the poll tax, is the same John Major who cannot sort out the recession because as Chancellor his policies created the recession. The Iron Lady has been replaced by the man of straw.
But Mr Major, who is visiting a hospice in Cambridge, can point to the poll published today which shows the Tories have opened up an 8-point lead over Labour.
But if you listen to Gordon Brown's speeches, he apparently thinks I also created the recession in the United States, the downturn in France, the recession in Canada, and no doubt in a large number of other countries. And of course, it is economic illiteracy, isn't it, for him to say that?
And now, with news of today's sport, here's Giles Smith.
Arsenal and Nottingham Forest went through to the FA Cup semi-finals today, beating Cambridge and Norwich, respectively. Tony Adams scored the winner in his first match back at Highbury since coming out of prison. And a 1-0 win for Forest kept alive Brian Clough's hopes of finally winning the cup. In the league, Jan Molby hit 2 penalties as Liverpool finally got a win for stand-in manager Ronnie Moran to put them back level with Arsenal. This time last year, Aston Villa were challenging Liverpool at the top. Now they're 6th from the bottom. Today they took on Luton, just a place above. Villa's new £1 million signing, Gary Penrise, got an early chance, but Chamberlain saved well. And it was Luton who scored first, Elstrup and Black combining well to force Paul Mountfield into an own goal. A minute before half-time, it was 2, one of the goals of the season from young Petheridge. In the second half, Platt managed to squander a penalty. And Villa's only consolation was a goal nodded on by Platt for Cascarino. They're not out of the relegation danger zone. In Scotland, Mark Walters got the winner as Rangers went 6 points clear. Aberdeen didn't play. In Rugby League, Widnes won their way into the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup, beating Warrington 26-14, and it was a dramatic match.
There's little love or respect between these two neighbouring sides. Warrington and Widnes went to war again today, and neither side was taking prisoners. Unlike in football, there's no play acting in Rugby League, but up front it was Widnes who were providing all the drama. It took them more than half an hour to score their first try. Hume finished the move, but from then on the Warrington defence was never the same. It broke up again in the second half for Columbo to carve his way through. But by this time the match was won. Kerrier's interception try, the result of tired Warrington defending. Eight minutes later they gave the ball away again. Anyone else but a fire might have been caught, but on this surface Linford Christie himself might have struggled to reach him. A small dispute near the end gave witnesses Sorensen the chance to get in the bath first, and Warrington at least salvaged some pride with 2 late tries. Peter Staunton, ITN Sport, Warrington.
In athletics, Linford Christie kept the British flag flying in the Indoor World Championships in Seville after his silver medal yesterday, going through to the final of the 200 metres. Christie did all the work in his semi-final down the back straight, pegging back 4 men outside him. By the time he turned into the straight, he was easing up, the race in his pocket. Addy Maffey will also be in tomorrow's final, coming second in his semi-final. Next week, racing's Cheltenham Festival, and on Saturday, England go for rugby's Grand Slam. Trevor.
Thank you, Giles. Finally, some of the American fighter crews serving in the Gulf return home today to families and friends in Britain. Wives and girlfriends were on the tarmac at Upper Heyford in Oxfordshire to welcome them back.
The first of the F-111s touched down at its home base ahead of schedule, the crews anxious to be home. Their wives, children and girlfriends shivered on the tarmac as one by one the aircraft taxied to a halt. It had been a long time. This bear had been to Baghdad and back. 28 F-111s returned today. They'd suffered no losses. But the children had missed their dads. Tonight, they're enjoying what they describe as the mother and father of all homecoming parties.
That's the news so far this evening. ITN has summaries throughout the night here on ITV. But from the weekend team, good night.
After the Ribble by-election, what should the government do about the poll tax? Brian Walden will be interviewing Norman Tebbit, the former Conservative Party chairman, on Sunday at 1:10 on ITV.
Good evening. Well, as soon as there's half a chance to be rid of one troublesome weather system, there's already another knocking on our door. You can see how things have been shaping up from satellite today. The old area of low pressure sitting over the Isle of Man there, with these patches of cloud gently circulating around it there. 1 or 2 brighter spells as well, but also a fair number of showers. Down to the southwest, it is a little bit brighter, as you can see, some blue sky coming through, so most of us should catch a glimpse of the sun tomorrow. But already out behind me, the next patch of cloud will bring showers, perhaps even 1 or 2 longer spells of rain into the southwest later tomorrow. But let's come back to tonight's weather in more detail. The fog is still lingering up in the northeast. It should go later tonight or tomorrow, I think. Still a lot of showers around as well, especially up in the northwest there, with many central and eastern parts becoming dry overnight and nowhere particularly cold. Lowest temperatures around 5. Tomorrow then a rather grey start for many people. I think a lot of low cloud around in many places, and certainly quite a few showers still up in the northwest. Many places will brighten up for a time. We should all see, I think, a glimpse of the sun, but those showers will be back again into the southwest during the morning, and then probably up into Wales and central southern England later in the afternoon and evening. The far northeast, as you can see, brighter than it's been for days. The temperatures then, with that little bit of sunshine, perhaps as high as 13 in the southeast, that's 55. Further north, 9, well, that's only 48, but it's not too bad for March. There's the sunset times for tomorrow evening. Here's the national summary.
Next tonight, Rod Stewart, Dudley Moore and Patricia Hodge are the guests, joining Aspel and Company.
I move with the times. I want progress, performance. To help defend my eyes from the signs of aging, I've discovered Plenitude Contour Regard Cream Gel for the eyes.
New from L'Oreal, Contour Regard, an eye cream gel with the immediate freshness of a gel and the active ingredients of liposomes.
Contour Regard works in 3 ways. It helps combat the appearance of lines, puffiness and dark circles.
New for eyes, Plenitude Contour Regard by L'Oreal. Challenge the signs of aging.
Say thank you with Cadbury's Roses.
Good evening. Well, after a fairly grey and cheerless day in the southeast today, I'm probably on quite a safe bet by forecasting a somewhat brighter day for tomorrow, and it will certainly stay mild. 13 in many places tomorrow. That's way above the average for this time of year. A lot of cloud around tonight, though, and that'll give us a fairly grey start to the morning, I think. A lot of low cloud around just to start the day, but it should brighten up fairly quickly. Most of us seeing at least a little bit of sunshine for some time during the day, but during the afternoon the clouds thickening up again, especially down from the southwest, where there'll be showers or perhaps even 1 or 2 outbreaks of rain around. Moderate southwesterly breeze, but that should do nothing to make it feel any colder. Temperatures, in fact, tomorrow are a fraction higher than today, up around 13, and that's about 55. A bit cooler down on the coast there, where the winds are still coming off that fairly cool sea. So make the most of what sunshine there is tomorrow. The showers are coming back, and the rest of this week looks fairly unsettled. That's about it from me then. I'll leave you now with a summary of tomorrow's weather.
Sunday at 9.
Fetch the police. There's been a shooting.
Harrington Pace, up at Hunter's Lodge, shot with one of his own revolvers.
The Hunter.
This crime was of a daring most extraordinary. It had to be like clockwork.
Has become the prey.
Perhaps we'd better start looking for another body, not a witness.
Agatha Christie's Poirot, Sunday at 9.
Back to this evening, where now we've lively and stimulating conversation as you're invited to join Aspel and Company.